I heard the outcry from people like yourself. I looked at the Republican Party platform and saw it had been in there. And I looked at the general attitude that many people in this building have had for years, which is that they believe that your rights can be controlled by them. And I would argue that with them, because I believe that the Second Amendment doesn't come from a government institution, a bureaucrat, or a politician. It comes from God Almighty. What brought me out here is I'm sick and tired of asking the government for permission to use my Second Amendment rights. And I was proud to join up with a lot of these constituents here and demanding that the government give them back. What I'm trying to achieve is to restore the Constitution the way it was intended, so that we don't have to pass a test, pay a fee or a fine to get our Second Amendment rights. The Texans have the right to defend themselves regardless of the situation. HB 195 would allow open carry or concealed carry, and it would make the CHL process optional. So we will still have the CHL for reciprocity reasons across the state, but if you're in Texas and you stay in Texas, then it's up to you whether you submit to that or not. If you applied the same principles that some of the bureaucrats and politicians here in Austin are trying to apply to the Second Amendment, if you tried to do that to the First Amendment, people would be absolutely going insane. I would ask that anybody that loves liberty, loves the notion of personal responsibility, and doesn't think that our rights come from government but from God, to join us in this fight.
Sold out for weeks due to the difficult and extensive proprietary process behind its creation, the exclusive INFOWARS Life Secret 12 formulation is now back in stock in the last limited shipment of 2014. The most bioactive form that has been created with our proprietary process. This ultra-clean vitamin B12 nutraceutical has been carefully crafted and developed over the last 2 years and is based on cellular science of how your body actively absorbs essential nutrients. Secret 12 is taken by mouth, right on the tongue, and then swallowed. No needles, no injections. Vitamin B12 deficiency is linked to scores of serious problems. And Secret 12 is a fusion of 2 organic proprietary forms of vitamin B12, bringing you a true nutraceutical quality vitamin B12. Secret 12. Secret 12 is an excellent Christmas gift and is tailor-made to boost your New Year's resolutions. Supplies of Secret 12 are very limited. Secure yours today at InfoWarsLife.com or by calling toll-free 888-253-3139. 2015 is almost here, and with it comes those New Year's resolutions to finally transform your body the way you want it. There's a reason over 88% of New Year's resolutions fail. Make this year different by equipping yourself with Oxy Powder, the next level in cleansing the body naturally. Using super oxygenation, Oxy Powder, available through InfoWarsLife.com, gently cleanses the body while you sleep with easy capsules. Tens of thousands of individuals have used Oxy Powder to cleanse their bodies and aid in their transformations. Even InfoWars Nightly News Director Rob Dew has been using Oxy Powder with incredible success.
Took it that first day, and then I took it for 6 more days after that. 12 pounds melted off in about a week. I'd say a week, 7 days.
2015 can be different. Diet and exercise are important, but a lot of us have already tried that. Oxy Powder flushes it out. Secure your Oxy Powder at InfoWarsLife.com. That's InfoWarsLife.com or 888-253-3139.
Well, governments are fond of using predators as symbols of their government. Think about the American eagle or the Russian bear. Maybe a better symbol might be the mosquito. Going back to the Declaration of Independence, Thomas Jefferson talked about a government that sent out swarms of officers to harass our people and eat out their substance. But I think the fact that mosquitoes essentially do their work imperceptibly, if they do it correctly, after they take from you what they want, they'd leave you with disease. So maybe we ought to start using the mosquito as the symbol. But of course, we've got our technocracy looking at many different ways they can use mosquitoes to carry out their agenda. Just last week, we had the Harvard professor who was speaking at Davos. This is the story from Paul Joseph Watson on Friday, talking about how privacy was over. They were going to use mosquitoes to collect your DNA, and there was nothing you could do about it. They were going to turn that over to the government. They're going to turn it over to insurance companies, use it however they wished. And now we see that in Florida, we have a British company talking about releasing millions of genetically modified mosquitoes in the Florida Keys containing herpes simplex virus and E. coli bacteria. Don't worry, it won't hurt you. This is what they say. As war wages over genetic modifications of the food supply, mega biotech companies have already begun launching campaigns to release millions of GMO insects in the Florida Keys region that have been crossbred with herpes simplex virus and E. coli bacteria. Of course, this is put into their genetic DNA, but they say, don't worry, this is to keep them from breeding. They're not just sterilizing these insects and then hoping that they're not going to be able to reproduce. No, they're actually going to poison them with herpes and E. coli, but you don't have to worry, it's not going to transmit over to your DNA. Really? They already combined a virus with a mosquito genetics. Why can't that genetic modification make its way to you as well? But of course, we're not supposed to look too closely at that. Instead, we're supposed to be panicked about measles. This outbreak that began in Disneyland, and they don't know who patient 0 is now being used to demonize anyone who wants to question the safety and the efficacy of vaccines. We have panic spreading everywhere. Just look at this article that just came out in California. A Costco location in Gilroy, California, one of their largest sites, said that they had a shopper who visited their store that had measles. And so now they're putting up messages, and the media is dutifully spreading the panic about measles. The headline from Breitbart says, measles panic spreads at Bay Area Costco and Walmart. How about the media spreads panic about measles? If we look at this report from NBC in San Diego, they have a timeline of the outbreak of measles. And if you look at January 14th, they talk about 6 siblings ranging in age from 22 months to 18 years old came into an urgent care with rashes and measles-like symptoms. Staff immediately shut the center down and took the names of the patients. You see, they're taking this more seriously than they did the Ebola outbreak. And I say that because of the reactions of the CDC and the media. Of course, we were all told that when someone contracted Ebola, they certainly took their time in shutting down hospitals. They took several days. That's why nurses came down with it. They didn't have the appropriate gear. And we had the CDC telling everybody there's nothing to worry about. We see exactly the opposite with measles, a disease that I had as a child. Many of us had these childhood diseases that we now have to be vaccinated for because they're so dire and so dangerous. Can't you see the agenda going on here? Everybody my age and a couple of decades younger, it was a common thing for us to have measles and various childhood diseases, and we need to look at the risk of other things that may be produced by these vaccines from these adjuvants that they put into the vaccine, formaldehyde, mercury, other things. We need to be very concerned about possible side effects. Rob Dew breaks this down for us in more detail.
This is Rob Dew reporting for INFOWARS.com and INFOWARS Nightly News. And this report is an update on 2 reports that I've filed this month, basically, and the one I actually filed just over the weekend. The first one is about the little girl who died of the flu after taking the flu shot. Well, now there's another little girl that died. In addition to the numerous other cases that are out there, somebody sent me this morning and said, you have to look at this one. Here's the headline from the Daily Mail. Girl 5 dies from strain of flu she was vaccinated against as deadly epidemic continues to sweep across the U.S. And this is something we're seeing everywhere. And the CDC comes out with this song and dance that I'm about to show you, where they say, well, we guessed the wrong strain of flu. They didn't guess anything wrong. They're deliberately putting this stuff in there so people get the flu. But we'll get more into that in a second. A 5-year-old girl has died in hospital 3 days after developing a strain of flu that she was vaccinated against as the deadly outbreak of the virus continues to sweep across the country. And once again, this article is filled with pictures of this beautiful little girl. She loved Frozen. She loved playing with her friends. She liked the color purple. They always put this stuff in there, and it really just tears at my heart reading these stories of parents who are trying to protect their kids from flu, and they think they're doing the right thing by getting the vaccine. Here's more. The youngster is the 4th child in the Nevada-based county and the 56th nationwide to have died in the flu in the past few months as vaccines have proved largely ineffective. Kira's death also comes after the CDC reported last week that more than 3/4 of people who had the injection, which contains strains of influenza A, this year will get the virus anyway. So even with all the hype about getting your flu vaccine, how it's everywhere in the media, everywhere in the news, you go to every drugstore, they're trying to get you to do your flu shot. You have 7-Eleven promoting workers to get their floofy shots. It's the worst performing ever since they've been recording this 10 years now that we're into this flu vaccine hysteria and tracking the results. So are you going to get the flu shot? Are you going to give it to your kids? I'm going to share with you a little story. This happened just this past weekend. Playing football out in the street with a bunch of my neighbors. And earlier, it was a week before that, my kids weren't allowed to play with their kids because they all had the flu, this one family. And in talking, they said, oh yeah, well, we got all our flu shot injections and we still got it. And then another neighbor from across the street says they all had their flu shots and 3 out of the 4 got the flu. And now let's turn to the measles outbreak. I just put out a report over the weekend, Disneyland measles outbreak caused by the vaccine, ? And I went through the statistics and the LA Times article saying that 5 people had gotten it that were vaccinated. 2 out of the 5 workers that were vaccinated got the disease, and that's only the ones that they tested. Well, now we got one more. Measles outbreak traced to Disneyland continues to grow. At least 85 cases are now confirmed in 7 states. Alaska health officials are closely monitoring 1-year-old Rivki Webb after she tested positive for measles this week. Her mother, Emily, said the family had just returned from a visit to Southern California. Rivki had also just received the measles vaccine. And then you get to the end of this CBS News article, and you got a quote from the mother who says, I want people to be aware and to vaccinate their kids, said Emily Webb, because the whole reason that she got sick in the first place was because people don't vaccinate. Well, if you vaccinated your kid, then she should be protected from the virus, right? And isn't that the whole reason they tell you to get these and that they're safe and effective? Well, then your daughter gets it after she'd been vaccinated. And I read in the insert, in 3 different spots, it says you could get measles or a measles-like rash in the insert as one of the side effects. Yet people still continue to do it because they don't ask for these inserts. It's amazing, totally amazing. But here's Wired magazine. Why did vaccinated people get measles at Disneyland? Blame the unvaccinated. And this is medical arrogance at its finest right here. They claim because people aren't getting the vaccine that they're making the vaccinated people sick, which just defies logic because supposedly if you're vaccinated, you're protected from the disease. But that's not the case, and we find that time and time again. And it's hard to find these, and that's why we really make a big deal out of it when we do see it, when we see people admitted that, hey, they were vaccinated, but they still got the disease. We need to make note of this because they tell you time and time again that you should inject these foreign substances into your bodies and it's going to protect you. And anytime we don't see it, we have to point it out. We have to keep these people honest because the CDC, that's their job, is to get more people vaccinated. That's the program because most of these CDC heads are former Big Pharma employees. And this is the whole thing. When I interviewed Dr. Sherry Tenpenny years ago, went up to her office, and she said, you know, Rob, this is what I think it is. I think that the reason they push these vaccines, especially on these young kids, is so they become lifelong customers because they're going to see these other problems crop up. They may not have a serious adverse reaction, but they'll get something like allergies, or they'll get earaches, or they'll get tonsillitis, something that keeps them coming back for more medical care. You really need to do the research on vaccinations, and we need to pressure these vaccine companies out there to do the obvious research. Let's look at all the problems. Let's not look at these carefully clinical studies that are paid for by the vaccine companies. Let's get some independent studies in there. Let's demand that our government do these independent studies. Let's demand that the CDC do these independent studies. Let's stop taking the vaccine companies' word that everything is safe and effective because it's not. We know it's not. And we can see these things time and time again. So it's time to start holding their feet to the fire and making them accountable for what they're doing. They have blanket immunity now. There's these vaccine courts that pay out the damages, but the vaccine companies never have to admit culpability. It's time to end stuff like this. If you like reports like these, please consider becoming a member of PrisonPlanet.tv. We're still running our biggest special ever. For $29.95, you can become a member of PrisonPlanet.tv for a whole year and share your username and password with up to 20 people. And remember, you got to work on your immune system. That is what's going to protect you from these diseases, not hocus pocus from the vaccine community, especially those out there who are profiting from making the vaccines themselves.
Well, that's it for our news tonight. If you're watching us on Google, please subscribe to our channel. And if you're not a subscriber to Prison Planet TV, please consider subscribing there as well. We have our lowest price ever, $29.95. That's part of the year-end, year-beginning special that we run every year, but it's the lowest level it's ever been. And of course, extending to the most number of people we've ever extended that to. 20 people can use that membership. Join us tomorrow night at 7 Central, 8 p.m. Eastern.